an alligator with an object in his mouth. As the detective got closer, they fired one round to the alligator. The alligator dropped the object that he had in his mouth, and we were able to retrieve Talon's body intact.
On April Fool's Day, April 1st, 2023, headlines flooded social media with shocking titles like "Boy Found in Alligator's Mouth," "2-year-old Eaten by Gator," leaving everyone stunned. At first, many thought it was a sick joke, but sadly, this was no prank. The story centered on a horrifying discovery made by a fisherman in St. Petersburg, Florida, just hours after an Amber Alert was issued for a missing 2-year-old boy named Talon Mosley. Where were Talon's parents? Was it another accident or a brutal crime? We will find out in this video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay updated. What followed was a disturbing and twisted story. Viewer discretion is advised. It all began on the morning of Thursday, March 30th, 2023. Like every morning, Lakita Denson tried to FaceTime her daughter, Passion Jeffrey. But every call went straight to voicemail. Lakita grew very concerned. Passion Jeffrey, just 20 years old, had grown up in St. Petersburg, Florida. She graduated from Northeast High School with honors in 2021, despite facing major challenges. During her junior year, she became pregnant, yet she managed to push through and succeed. In her graduation photo, she proudly held her baby boy, Talon Mosley, born on October 23, 2020, with her boyfriend, Thomas Mosley. Thomas Mosley had been chasing his dream of becoming a rapper. Instead of holding down a steady job, he focused on his music, leaving Passion to shoulder most of the responsibility. But Passion was determined to build a stable life for herself and her son. She worked full-time at a local CVS pharmacy and, through sheer hard work, managed to get an apartment at the Lincoln Shores complex. Supporting herself and her child wasn't easy, but Passion was proud of what she had accomplished. Talon, now 2 years old, was known as a sweet, loving boy with a bright personality. His family affectionately called him Tay-Tay, and he was always dressed in his favorite color, orange. While Passion worked, Talon stayed with his grandmother or his great-aunt. No matter how busy Passion was, she always found time to FaceTime her son during breaks. The bond between them was clear. Talon couldn't wait for her to come home after work. Passion had only been living at Lincoln Shores for about a month when Thomas started spending more time at her apartment. Despite his lack of steady work, things seemed to be going relatively smoothly in the weeks leading up to the end of March. In fact, on Wednesday, March 29th, Passion hosted a party at their apartment to celebrate Thomas's 21st birthday. Family and friends joined in the celebration, and everything appeared fine when they said goodbye that night. However, the next morning, everything changed. Passion's mother and aunt tried calling her multiple times, but no one answered. Something wasn't right. Worried, the aunt decided to stop by Passion's apartment at the Lincoln Shores complex. When the aunt arrived, she noticed something chilling, a trail of blood starting near Passion's blue Nissan and leading all the way to her apartment door. She knocked and banged on the door, but no one answered. Desperate, she found a staff member and requested a welfare check. Given the blood and the lack of response, the worker agreed to unlock the door. Nothing could have prepared them for what they found inside. Blood was everywhere, evidence of a violent struggle. In the bathroom, they discovered Passion's lifeless body. She had been stabbed more than 100 times beyond recognition. But one thing made the situation even worse. 2-year-old Talon was missing. There was no sign of the little boy. Had someone taken him? Was he still alive? Or had something unthinkable happened to him too? These questions hung heavily in the air as the search for Talon began. When police arrived at the Lincoln Shores apartments, their top priority was clear: find 2-year-old Talon Mosley and make sure he was safe. They knew they had a crime on their hands, but before focusing on solving Passion's murder, they needed to ensure Talon wasn't another victim. An Amber Alert was immediately issued, and soon the entire community, local police, and even the FBI joined the search for the missing boy. Since Thomas Mosley had been the last person with Passion and Talon after the birthday party ended, he became a person of immediate interest. There was hope that he might have taken Talon somewhere safe, and whatever happened to Passion had occurred after they left. If Thomas wasn't involved, maybe Talon could still be found unharmed. Thomas's mother's house was only a 20-minute drive away. Maybe he had gone there with his son. Meanwhile, local news outlets quickly picked up the story.
And locally, an Amber Alert has been issued for this missing 2-year-old boy you see on the right side of your screen here. It happened at the Lincoln Shores Apartments on 4th Street North, where detectives found 20-year-old Passion Jeffrey dead. Police tell us her 2-year-old son, Talon Mosley, is missing right now. Again, you see him right here. Police believe he could be in danger. The FDLE says he's been kidnapped. They are searching for him right now.
Meanwhile, investigators tracked Thomas Mosley to his mother's house. She told them he had shown up the night before around 9:15 p.m. with noticeable cuts on his arms and hands. He had just gone to St. Andrew's Hospital. When investigators found Thomas, they noticed the cuts on his hands appeared to be consistent with knife slip injuries, common when someone's hand slides onto the blade during a stabbing. These were not defensive wounds. When questioned, Thomas refused to cooperate and immediately asked for a lawyer. The fact that he didn't have Talon with him and wouldn't say where the child was made the search even more urgent.
We want to talk to the father. Again, we want to know where Talon is. And we want the father, if he knows where Talon is, to tell us. And that's what we want. We want Talon.
As police continued questioning Thomas, first responders, helicopters, drones, and K-9 units scoured St. Petersburg, desperately searching for Talon. The family's pleas echoed across the city and beyond. They said, "Talon is such a sweet boy. He's always smiling, always laughing. He adored his mom, and she loved him more than anything. We're asking the public, please help us find Talon. We've already lost Passion, and we can't lose Talon too. Someone knows something. Please, don't stay silent." As the search for Talon Mosley intensified, dive teams scoured nearby canals and lakes, while a bloodhound from a neighboring county was brought in to assist. Investigators searched Passion's car, and a flatbed truck hauled away an apartment dumpster to sift through potential evidence. Ground teams worked tirelessly through the night, and the community rallied to help bring Talon home. One neighbor said, "A toddler missing, a mother found dead. It was a very violent homicide. Why is there so much hate in this world, that you could do something so horrible, such a heinous crime? Just absolutely devastating." As investigators processed the scene at Passion's apartment, neighbors recalled hearing some noise around 8:15 p.m. Wednesday night. While they noticed a disturbance, it hadn't seemed serious enough to call the police. The search dragged on through Friday afternoon, with no sign of the missing toddler. Then, late in the evening, a chilling break in the case occurred. Only a few blocks from Thomas's mother's house, a man named Liddell Golden was fishing at Lake Maggiore, located in Delhomes Park. The lake, known for its massive alligator population, didn't initially alarm Liddell when he spotted one in the water. But something about this sighting felt different. He noticed the alligator gripping what appeared to be a large object in its mouth, and dread washed over him. He realized what that object was. With searchers and officers already patrolling the area, Liddell quickly flagged them down. As they got closer, they found an alligator holding the lifeless body of a small child. An officer fired a single shot at the alligator's head. The creature released its grip, and police retrieved the child's body. Tragically, it was confirmed to be 2-year-old Talon Mosley.
What was the reaction, to seeing the human body in an alligator's mouth after that shot was fired?
Well, I can't tell you that. Just think about anybody. The officer sees a body of a child. What would be your reaction to that? What would you think? So that officer, he or she they've been working since Wednesday, and they see a child in an alligator's mouth. So they got to do their job, but at the same time, I can't tell you their reaction. I can tell you probably a lot of emotion went through their body, but they still had to do their job.
Investigators quickly focused on Talon's father, Thomas Mosley, who had checked himself into St. Anthony's Hospital with multiple cuts on his arms and legs. They suspected something was terribly wrong, but they needed more evidence to make an arrest. By April 1st, headlines flooded social media with shocking titles like "Boy Found in Alligator's Mouth," "2-year-old Eaten by Gator," and "Missing Toddler Discovered in Jaws of Alligator." Many people thought it had to be some cruel hoax. But for those familiar with Florida's wildlife, the story hit close to home. Alligator attacks on pets and small children aren't unheard of, but the idea that something so horrific could happen to Talon left the community in disbelief. People wanted answers. How did Talon end up in the lake? Was he alive when he got there? So investigators went back to the first crime scene, Passion's apartment, hoping to find solid evidence. And they found it. In the bathroom where her body was discovered, investigators found bloody footprints bearing the distinct Gucci logo, indicating that the killer was wearing Gucci shoes. Under a bed, they discovered a cleaning product bottle covered in bloody fingerprints. When tested, those fingerprints were confirmed to match Thomas Mosley's. They pulled data from Passion's phone, which showed her last known location. Her phone left the apartment around 8:30 p.m. Wednesday and pinged near Lake Maggiore before arriving at Thomas's mother's house at 9:15 p.m. Shortly after, Thomas went to the hospital to get treatment for his cuts. This timeline, along with other key evidence, gave investigators enough to arrest Thomas Mosley and charge him with 2 counts of first-degree murder. One for Passion and one for Talon. In a press conference, the St. Petersburg police chief addressed the community, detailing how they found Talon and outlining the charges against Thomas.
The father, Thomas Mosley, is now being charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. I can tell you now that Talon's mom, Miss Jeffries, her body was stabbed multiple times. Until the medical examiner has a chance to look at Talon's body, we cannot tell you the cause of death.
After Thomas Mosley's arrest on Friday night, new and disturbing details emerged through the release of the affidavit. In a press conference, the police chief had already revealed that Passion had been stabbed multiple times. But according to the affidavit, the actual number was more than 100. It's a horrifying detail that paints a clearer picture of just how violent the attack was. As for Talon, the exact cause of his death remained a mystery. An affidavit suggested that being thrown into the lake played a role in his death, leading to a disturbing question. Was he still alive when his father threw him into the water and killed by the alligator, or had he already been dead beforehand? According to the medical examiner, Talon was alive when he entered the water, but was not attacked by the alligators, as his body was found fully intact with no form of injury. His cause of death was therefore ruled as drowning. On Saturday, right after his arrest, Thomas Mosley made his first court appearance, pleading not guilty. According to criminal defense attorney Bryant Camerano, from a defense perspective, short of any mental health issues, insanity or incompetency, it's hard to see how there's much of a defense here. Camerano explained that the case could take up to 2 years before reaching trial, given its complexity. When asked whether the evidence was strong enough to link Mosley to the crime, he said, "I think there's enough circumstantial evidence that points to premeditation. The number of stab wounds, the fact that he went to the hospital afterward with cuts, and sadly, the death of the child, it all suggests intent. I believe there's enough here to convict." Mosley faces 2 counts of first-degree murder. Given the severity of the charges, Camerano noted that Mosley's defense team might seek a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. He said, "If I were his lawyer, I'd be pushing to resolve this without a trial, offering something like life in prison or 50 years. Even 50 years is essentially a death sentence, but it's not the same as facing capital punishment and a lengthy legal battle that could drag on for decades." There's little public information about Thomas's background or who he is as a person. But after some digging, we discovered his YouTube channel, boasting over 1,000 subscribers and 57 videos. These low-quality music videos were quite something to behold. Thomas flashing stacks of cash, brandishing weapons, and smoking weed like it was a competitive sport. As for the lyrics, Let's just say trying to make sense of them felt like decoding a military-grade encrypted message. They were chaotic, incoherent, and left us wondering if the investigators' comment about Thomas possibly battling mental health issues might have some truth to it. According to an officer who briefly interacted with him at the hospital, Thomas was showing signs of serious psychological struggles. Normally, police wouldn't make such a claim unless something about the suspect's behavior was significant enough to warrant it. This raises the possibility that his defense team might pursue an insanity plea during the trial. Given that Florida still enforces the death penalty for first-degree murder, his lawyers may focus on avoiding a capital sentence. We've seen cases before, like Aiden Fucci's, where attempts to claim insanity failed because the defendant's behavior came across as staged. But what was it about Thomas's behavior that made police officers point out his mental state so early in the investigation? Could it have been genuine? Or will it just be another failed attempt at deflecting responsibility? Another possible defense could be that Thomas was also a victim during the attack. However, police have already dismissed this theory, stating that the evidence doesn't support it. One puzzling aspect is how Thomas went straight to a hospital after the crime. It's unusual for someone who just committed murder to check themselves into a medical facility, knowing they could be caught. His wounds must have been severe enough to warrant immediate medical attention, or he might have attempted to hide out longer. The fact that he remained hospitalized from Wednesday night until Friday night before being arrested shows how serious his injuries likely were. Online speculation has pointed to a chilling theory that Thomas may have planned these murders as a sick way to mark his 21st birthday. Many believe that waiting until after the party, taking Pashan's phone, and not attempting to flee indicates a calculated act. The excessive violence, stabbing Pashan over 100 times, suggests a deep level of rage, not something that happens in a momentary fit of anger. Even if he snapped during an argument, what he did to Talon afterward feels cold and deliberate. The most disturbing part is how he disposed of Talon, tossing his own son into a lake infested with alligators, like tossing trash. Thomas likely intended for his son to never be found. If not for Liddell Golden, the fisherman who happened to be in the right place at the right time, the search for Talon might have continued indefinitely. It's horrifying to think what might have happened if Talon's body hadn't been discovered intact. Thanks to Liddell, Talon can now be properly laid to rest, and his recovery could provide crucial evidence in seeking justice. In a deeply personal twist, Liddell later learned that Pashan might have been a distant relative of his. He described how difficult the experience has been, especially as a father of a child the same age as Talon. He believes that being there at that exact moment was more than coincidence. It felt like divine intervention. Pashan's family is still enduring the agonizing process of seeking justice for her and Talon. In October 2023, a judge declared Thomas Mosley incompetent to stand trial. This decision came after reviewing reports from 2 court-appointed doctors who recommended that he be sent to a state hospital in Chattahoochee for treatment. The judge said, "I'll find that Mr. Mosley is not competent to proceed, but I'll find that he is restorable." In 2024, he entered more court evaluations. However, at the time of making this video, there are no reliable updates on his condition or any changes in the case's status. In the meantime, legal experts like Anthony Rickman asserted that Thomas Mosley is unlikely to ever walk free, regardless of the current ruling. He said right now he's been found incompetent, so he's being sent to the state hospital to restore that competence. This isn't about him claiming, "I was insane at the time of the offense." Incompetency means that at this moment, he isn't mentally fit to stand trial or assist in his own defense. It's a procedural step to ensure he is in the right state of mind when the trial happens. So far, Thomas's family has remained silent, while Pashan's family has bravely shared their grief with the public.
I want people to remember them as 2 kids who absolutely loved each other.
For Pashan's family, the most haunting thought is how much both mother and son must have suffered.
Biggest worry was that how they suffered. And when I close my eyes at night, that's all I see was the suffering of both of them. I feel like the community has wrapped their arms around us, and it's a wonderful feeling.
It could take years before this case goes to trial. However, many are hoping that Thomas will admit to what he did before then, sparing the family and community from reliving the gruesome details in court. For now, we wait for more information, including any insight into Thomas's past or possible warning signs of this tragedy. So what do you think about this case? To us, there's little doubt that Thomas is responsible for these horrific acts. But do you believe his actions could have been driven by a serious mental health issue? Personally, we find it hard to believe that someone could snap and then act with such violence and precision. If he had truly lost control, why wouldn't he have spared Talon, or at least taken him somewhere safe? Everything about this feels heartless and calculated. At the same time, it's baffling that someone who wanted fame as a rapper would throw his life away with such a senseless crime. Could frustration over a failed music career have driven him to commit these acts, thinking it didn't matter anymore? Until we learn more about his relationship with Passion and any potential history of violence, it's difficult to say what really caused this tragedy. No matter what comes out in the years ahead, one thing remains certain. Passion and Talon deserve justice. Passion worked so hard to create a better life for herself and her son. To see both of their lives end in such a violent and senseless way is beyond heartbreaking. If you found today's story compelling, please consider exploring our channel for more fascinating true crime content. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on our latest videos. Have a case you'd like us to cover? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.